Good evening. I now call the work session to order. The work session tonight is on the Mayor Battle's proposed road package and sales tax increase. Mayor Battle.
Thank you, Council. This is the time that we will talk about our roads, our future, about what will happen for the City of Huntsville. We have a brief presentation that we want to go through. It's a slideshow presentation. After the slideshow presentation, we would like to go through some questions that have come up, some of them Councilman Kling, some of them other questions that have come up, and then answer questions from council, and then hopefully open it up for public comment. So if that's agreeable with council, that's where we will start. Now, we're starting off with our Restore Our Roads, a $450 million 10-year capital plan that was in place in March of 2013. During March of 2013, life was good. We had road plans in place. We were moving towards the future. We had each one of our road plans that we thought were very important were in the 10-year capital plan of the Highway Department. In March of right after March of 2013, we learned from the Highway Director that we needed to do something different on roads. He stated that there was not the money to meet the demands that they had on the books, and without that money, John Cooper, who is a very good highway director, but he's an accountant. He likes for his ledger sheets to be balanced. He likes for his credits to equal his debits, and he noticed that his credits didn't equal his debits when he started talking about roads. So he wanted to put together a road plan that showed what money was coming in, $150 million a year in road construction, and what was going to be spent. When that happened, we moved off projects. We moved, the only project that we had in the 5-year plan for the state ALDOT program was the County Line Road project. Shields and Moores Mill at the end of I-565 moved from 2013 to 2022, which meant it would be probably 2025 or 2027 before we rode on that road. Overpasses at Lily Flags and Bird Springs moved from 2015 to 2019. And if you remember the way that the state constructed in the past has constructed overpasses, they do the access roads first, and then they do the overpasses. That takes about a 6-year process. That means in 2025, we might be riding on the roads at Lily Flag and Bird Spring, but that would probably depend on who the next governor was and what his next priorities were. Memorial Parkway, Maston Lake overpass moved from 2018 to 2024. If it was a 6-year building process, it would be 2030 before we rode on those roads. We started at that point, we went to see the governor. The governor told us that there was not the money to do the programs that we wanted, and we told him that we needed to start a campaign. And our campaign was to educate our legislature, our governor, our ALDOT, the Director of Highways, and our own people to understand how important roads were to our future, that these were major arterial roads that were made to move traffic. So we started on that, and we started the Restore Our Roads. $450 million worth of roads had been delayed or canceled. We have 50,000 people a day who come from another community, come to Huntsville, they work in Huntsville, they go out to another community. We are a regional shopping center, retail center. We are also a regional employment center. We tried to do A-trip funding. John Olszewski was with me at the meeting where we tried to put our major corridor roads into A-trip funding, and we were told no, that we couldn't do that, that A-trip funding was not made for that. So $88 million worth of A-trip funding went to minor collector roads, went to rebuild bridges, went to repave roads, but it did not go to your major collector roads, the ones that we needed to work on. So consequently, we had spent a summer doing the Restore Our Roads campaign. All of you were at some of those press conferences where we were educating our people. 2 months ago, we met with the governor, and we talked to the governor about the needs for roads here. And the only thing we could come up with is that we could come to a cost share that would get the state's attention so that we could get the roads that we need. We put together a historic cost sharing plan, 50% local money, 50% ALDOT money, which is federal and state money. We put together a $250 million, five-year road plan that would take care of our roads. And in 2020, we would be riding on all these roads, would take care of our road needs for for the next 5 to 7 years. We're a growing community. We're going to continue to have road needs. We have $250 million, $125 million comes from the state of Alabama, $125 million comes from the city of Huntsville. This is a contract with the state of Alabama, binding on both Huntsville and the state of Alabama. John Cooper, the director of Alabama Department of Transportation, has said that he will make it as binding a contract as we want. He won't play games with it, be very straightforward, but it will say that we will do these 7 projects, and we'll do these 7 projects over the next 5 years. 2014, one of the projects is US 72 East at Moore's Mill in Epworth. $14 million project was supposed to start in 2014. That is the 2013 and 14 year, which is right now. That's this year. And the reason we can go ahead with that project is because its engineering is done, engineering is finished, it's ready to go. South Memorial Parkway overpass is at Martin, Lily Flag, and Bird Spring. Engineering is 95% done on these projects. $64.5 million project can start next year. And they're talking about starting in November of next year. Shovel ready, ready to go, so we can move forward on that one. University Drive West from Providence to County Line Road, a $30 million project to solve a road problem that is almost gridlock. If you go from Providence, Maine out to County Line Road, you can't get there through there during certain times of the day. That is a problem in the western side of the county. This takes care of that problem. In 2017, we would start the South Memorial Parkway, Weatherly to Hobbs Road, and this is more of a what we could call a smart street pattern, super streets. It's a traffic management system so that you can get traffic up and down South Memorial Parkway. Also in 2017, we will be starting the Northern Bypass, which is the Martin Luther King extension from Pulaski Pike to North Parkway. That's a $20 million road. That road takes care of traffic from Hazel Green, Meridianville, South Tennessee. Also opens up some significant retail and industrial corridors for the city of Huntsville. Also in 2017, a $15 million project, Cecil Ashburn Boulevard. It gives us an alternate exit from Hampton Cove. If we look at the total summary, it's $208 million worth of roads. We have $32 million that is left out that we can work with the Alabama Department of Transportation to put in over the next 5 years. We will be riding on these roads by 2020. This gives us, this takes care of some of our road problems for a long term. Being a regional economic center, being a regional retail center, being a regional employment center, we have to have roads to be able to get our people from here and back out. We have to have roads to be able to get people to our retail centers and back out. In addition, one of the things that has come up is many people have said, why don't we sunset this? Why don't we do it for 5 years while we have the 5-year project with the state of Alabama and sunset this? In addition to this, we have about $508 million worth of road projects that aren't listed, things that have to be done. When you start talking about 6-laning I-565 from Wall Triana to I-65, $120 million, that is a project that has to be done so that we can stop having that stoppage that we have every morning, every afternoon, right about the Greenbrier exit. The Southern Bypass has got to be looked at. It's almost a $200 million project, but it's got to be looked at because our modeling shows that in 2029 to 2039, the parkway hits capacity, and it's our only north-south corridor. If we have only one north-south corridor, it's at capacity. We run into serious, serious traffic problems. That is a $200 million project. The Loop Road on Hobbs Road, taking Hobbs Road all the way over to 431, is going to be something that we're going to have to look at in the future. After these 2020, after these 5 years of road projects, we've got to look at that. Eastern Bypass to 72 is a project that we've got to look at. When you start looking at those, Research Park Boulevard from Gate 9 to north of Highway 72, 3 bridges we have to rebuild in that $200 million project, but it's got to be looked at. So we have needs beyond the 5-year period. That's one reason we didn't put in our ordinance that we sunset it, because we have needs way beyond that. And we have in the ordinance that we will be spending a minimum of $25 million per year on roads, on road construction. That $25 million a year I see going out for the next 10, 15, 20 years because we have those kind of road needs. If we continue to grow the way that we have been growing, if we continue to have the Boeing announcements like we had today, we will have continuing road needs even beyond that 20-year period. So the question comes, how do we pay for our roads? First question is it a want or is it a necessity? We evaluate it as a necessity. The roads are something we have to have for our future. If we're going to continue to provide the quality of life that we do in the city of Huntsville, if we are going to continue to have the economic growth like we had the announcement today on, we have got to maintain our road system. I've been in a town where we let the infrastructure get ahead of us, where we let the roads get in bad shape, where we couldn't handle the capacity of the traffic on those roads. And it's not a pretty sight. Many of y'all have been in other towns that have had that same thing happen. Once you get behind on infrastructure, you can't catch up. So we decided it's not a want, but this is a necessity. And now the question is, how do we pay for it? When we started looking at it, we looked at all options, and we will go through some questions in a minute. We started looking at all the options that we had. We have property tax, we have sales tax, we have business license fees, we have garbage fees, we have utility fees, we have a gas tax that we could have looked at, we have a cigarette tax that somebody mentioned. All those options are options that are out there, but the one that really came to, that this came to was the 1 cent sales tax. We are sitting at 8% sales tax. The surrounding communities are at 9%. The surrounding big cities are at 10%. Putting us up at 9% puts us on par with Madison, with Athens, with Arab, with Decatur, with all the communities that surround us. We looked at the sales tax also, and these are regional roads. Being regional roads, we felt like others should help pay for them. 75% of our sales tax comes from citizens of Huntsville, 25% comes from citizens from outside of Huntsville. That's one of the reasons we went to the sales tax. We've had a lot of questions. And so the questions are, as we come up, let's look at them. Has the city of Huntsville explored other revenue options? Yes. We have looked at all other variable funding, other funding options. The cost-sharing arrangement requires a minimum $25 million a year be spent on road construction. The rest of the money has to be spent on capital expenses or industrial recruitment incentives. The revenue stream has to be available immediately. That's one reason we went to the sales tax, because it would give us an immediate revenue stream so that we could start these projects in the 2014 year, which is this year. We could go ahead and get finished with these projects by 2020. Fuel tax was one thing somebody brought up. To do this with a fuel tax, it would take a 25-cent per gallon increase to reach the $25 million in annual revenues. What would happen? Motorists would go right outside the city of Huntsville. They would buy gas because they could buy it for 25 cents a gallon cheaper. They would come back into the city of Huntsville. They would ride on these roads that we are paying to fix. Fuel tax is not really an option in this. Business licenses. Our business licenses generate approximately $16 million a year. We would have to triple them to make this happen. The fees would only impact Huntsville businesses, and they would be passed along as an increased cost to the consumer. We felt like that the whole community needs to help pay for this. This is a community-wide project. They are community roads. Property tax. Property tax requires legislative approval, statewide referendum on a ballot, and the approval could take up to 1 year. By that time, I assure you that our $250 million worth of road projects will probably be committed elsewhere. Bond issue. The bond issue is a question that we've had Ms. Lane called and asked about that. And I told her, I said, Ms. Lane, if we did $125 million worth of bond issues, we'd pay $10 million a year for 20 years, and so we'd pay back $200 million for $125 million worth of road projects. We'd pay $75 million in interest. My interest in this is do a pay-as-you-go plan, not to burden future generations with debt, but to pay $25 million a year and get $25 million worth of roads so that we don't have to pay interest on this. We looked at toll roads, and toll roads are very good because toll roads you don't have to pay for right now. You can pay for in the future, and the people riding the roads will work. And we're going to have to look at that in the future on some road systems. But toll roads, the 7 roads in the ALDOT proposal are not controlled access and would not be eligible for toll roads. So we looked also at liquor tax. The city liquor tax is 12%. It earns $2.4 million a year. We would have to increase that to 120% of the sales price. If you came in and bought a $10 item in a liquor store, you would have to pay $12 worth of tax and pay $22 for it. It's an unreasonable burden on the retail business. Plus, a lot of your liquor tax, which would not be passed on, comes through the the ABC stores. Tobacco tax, excuse me. The city's 10 cents per pack earns $1.2 million a year. The tobacco tax would increase $2.20 per pack. Same thing would happen that happens with the gas. People would go right outside the city, they'd buy their tobacco products, they'd come right in, and we would never have the money there to increase the drive. Finally it came down to the 1 cent sales tax. There's not another source that's available to the city in the short term that would generate a minimum $25 million required in road cost sharing. We don't like the property tax, or the sales tax. For years, we've talked about the regressiveness of it, but it's what we're saddled with in being in the state of Alabama. We don't have an income tax. If you had a graduated income tax, that's one of the few taxes that is not regressive. But this is what we're saddled with. This is what we have as an option. This is a tool that we have in our toolbox. The 1 cent sales tax increase would take effect as of March 1st, 2014, generate between $30 and $34 million annually. It would provide a pay-as-you-go approach to everyone who uses the city's roads. And then Huntsville is a regional retail center. Approximately 25% of sales tax is paid by people who live outside the city. That's why we're looking at the sales tax. This puts us on par with other communities. Madison has a 9% sales tax. Decatur has a 9%. Athens has a 9%. Arab has a 9%. Birmingham, Montgomery, Mobile have 10% sales tax. This would put us on par with other communities and not make it advantageous to go to other communities to purchase. So the question comes, why can't the city take the money from its current budget? Huntsville is widely recognized as one of the top fiscally responsible communities in the nation. We've had 5 straight AAA credit ratings from Moody's and Standard & Poor's. Our budget is lean and tight. It's the same budget that you saw in October. There's not $25 million worth of fat in that budget. So why can't we take it from the current budget? We've reduced the size of government over the past 5 years. We've cut our budgets 10%. We cut outside agencies 10%. We eliminated non-essential budget items. We had a limited hiring freeze, and we still have a limited hiring freeze. We did employee buyouts, and then we cut $80 million from the capital plan to balance operational budgets. There's not an additional $25 million there. No funds available for major road projects. Another question comes up. Will the 1 cent sales tax expire after a 5-year agreement is completed? No, in our proposal, the 1 cent sales tax will not expire. By ordinance, the tax increase is designated for roads and capital economic development projects. And remember those $508 million worth of road projects that are in the future that are not among these 7 projects that we have right now. $508 million worth of needs that will be out there that will have to be addressed in the future. This $25 million gives us a way to do this on a pay-as-you-go basis year after year. Will the 1 cent, I think we've covered all that. Sales tax is regressive. Why choose this tax? Because of Alabama's tax structure, the only tax that is not regressive is the income tax, and we can't adopt an income tax. An occupational tax is not allowed. The 2010 state law blocked that. And then a significant portion of the 1% increase will be paid by people living outside of Huntsville, lessening the overall burden on Huntsville residents and those least able to pay. Can the city of Huntsville exempt groceries and medicine from the sales tax? State law does not allow municipalities to exempt food or medicine from taxes. That would require legislative actions and the governor's approval. Will this tax increase mean the city will pave more neighborhood roads? Mr. Kling's question there. The city has a long-term road improvement and maintenance plan with significantly more needs than resources allow. If you remember, it cost us $54,000 per lane mile to repave every lane mile of roads. If we went and paved every road in the city of Huntsville, it would cost us $2 billion. We spend about $3 million per year on road repaving. And Public Works creates a priority list based on traffic counts and on the conditions. It is, we were able to squeeze about $6 million into road repaving 2 and 3 years ago because of stimulus funding, but we have now dropped back to the $3 million per year for road repaving. These roads belong to the state. Why doesn't Huntsville wait for ALDOT to pay for the work? The easiest thing for us as a council to do, the easiest thing for me as a mayor to do, is wait, and when people call in and say these roads are getting bad, traffic is getting bad, I'm stopped in traffic, I can't get from here to there, is to say, I'm sorry, they're state roads. It's a state responsibility. Call your legislature. But unfortunately, the state problems become our problems very quickly. The state problems become our problems in economic development. The state problems become our problems with our citizens sitting in traffic and not being able to get from here to there. The state problems become our problems when we get into gridlock, when we have roads that are over capacity. It's one of the problems that we have to face, where it would be easier. Sometimes doing the easier thing is not the right thing to do. That's why we're facing this today. That's why we're looking at this. Also, Huntsville citizens need to use these roads. This is Huntsville's vision. We're being proactive and we're not being reactive. Many communities who are reactive are the ones who are behind the 8 ball now. If you look at any of the major cities in the state of Alabama, you'll find most of them have serious traffic problems because they have not been proactive, they have been reactive. We can't wait for someone else to do the job. We fought a good fight on Restore Our Roads. We went and tried to get this money put into the A-TRIP funding, but it didn't happen. So the joint agreement seems to be the best of all possible solutions. And we worked to get that agreement. We worked hard to get that agreement. So what happens if the city council doesn't approve the sales tax? Roads won't be built, and there is no plan B. We will sit back and we will watch County Line Road be the only road that is built over the next 5 years, and we'll fight for more roads. We'll fight for more roads with our state delegation, our Senate delegation, our legislative delegation, and our governor. But we will find ourselves behind the 8 ball. Mr. Kling had some questions for Shane Davis, and I'm sorry Shane can't be here tonight. Shane is deathly ill. He has been working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on industrial projects and on doing his job, and also on the Boeing project. So our thoughts and prayers with him and his family as he's homesick, because I know he's not sitting there very quietly. He's probably trying to sit on his computer and working on his computer as he's there. How are Birmingham, Mobile, and Montgomery contributing to state road projects in their area? Shane's answer. These are questions from Mr. Kling. Contributions by cities vary depending on the type of project. Most ALDOT, federal and state route projects, are funded 100% by ALDOT, 90 federal and 10 state. If a project is funded under a region's MPO program, then 80% is state funded and 20% is funded by the sponsoring city. Recently, the city of Madison agreed to fund 10% of the County Line Road interchange at I-565 to accelerate the project. Also in 2013, Mobile agreed to fund 50% of an ALDOT project in order to prevent the project from being delayed. And if you will remember, we paid 100% of Governor's Drive, which was a state road, $38 million so that we could get it done as we were building up the medical district so we could get traffic through there. And we did that in the last 6 years. How much state money are they, Birmingham, Mobile, and Montgomery, projected to receive over the next 5 years? Birmingham, Jefferson County, in terms of capacity projects, non-maintenance type, the Jefferson County area will have 5 federally funded projects related to Interstate 459 and Corridor X. Total funding for these projects is budgeted at $222 million. These projects were funded through the Federal Highway Administration as part of the Interstate program. Montgomery has only one capacity type project within the proposed 5-year ALDOT plan, $4 million intersection improvement at State Route 8 and I-85. Most other improvements are maintenance type projects. Mobile, currently there are 2 roadway projects slated for the capacity improvements in the Mobile area. State Route 158, which has been an ongoing project for the area, and State Route 158 is budgeted at $41 million. The second project is a federally funded project for an interchange improvement at I-65 and US 43 in fiscal year 17, and we don't have a price on that one. Note, these locations have additional state maintenance and local MPO projects that will be funded within the 5-year plan, similar to the Metro Huntsville MPO plan. These projects are mainly local roadway projects These type projects are typically funded through 80% MPO, local funds, and 20% city funds. How much does Huntsville-Madison County receive in gas tax returns for each dollar collected in our area for road projects? Excluding maintenance type projects, resurfacing, et cetera, Huntsville-Madison County has received an average return of 76 cents on each dollar collected for new construction type projects over the last 5 years of gas tax collection. Since the City of Madison and Madison County governments benefit from this proposed joint agreement, how much revenue are they contributing? The answer, 0. The proposed projects are within the city limits of Huntsville. And I will remind you that within the last 6 months, the City of Madison raised their sales tax by 0.5% to get to 9% for roads. Within the last 5 months, the City of Arab raised their sales tax by 0.5% for roads also. However, Madison and Madison County are providing matching funds for other critical area road projects within their jurisdiction. Projects like interchange improvements at I-565, County Line Road, U.S. Highway 72, County Line Road, Old Madison Pike, Zert Road, and Winchester Road. Question number 5, how much over the next 5 years would ALDOT spend in Huntsville without a sales tax increase or a formal 50-50 joint agreement? The ALDOT 5-year current plan has there's two projects slated for Madison County area. Neither project is in the City of Huntsville. The projects are City of Madison, interchange improvements, I-565 County Line Road, budgeted at $12 million. In Madison County, State Route 53 widening from Taurus Drive to Harvest Road, budgeted at $9 million. Question number 6, what legal safeguards would be in place if we raise the sales tax and enter into the 50-50 joint funding agreement? A formal transportation funding agreement would be developed between the state of Alabama and the City of Huntsville. All projects would be jointly funded, will be specifically identified within the agreement. Both the Governor's Office and ALDOT have assured the city that the agreement would guarantee construction of the projects listed within the agreement. The agreement would also be approved by the Huntsville City Council. Question number 7, if the City of Huntsville raises sales tax to fund the joint agreement, are the projects within the city limits of Huntsville? Yes, with the exception of 2 projects. Both MLK Northern Bypass Extension and U.S. Highway 72 improvements have small sections that lie within Madison County. Small sections, but the majority of it is in the City of Huntsville. Question number 8, how much funding did the City of Huntsville receive from ALDOT in the last 5 years for new road projects? ALDOT has invested $78.1 million in infrastructure improvements in the Huntsville-Madison County area. ALDOT also invested a total of $31.4 million in resurfacing projects during the same period. Question number 9, where does ALDOT plan to use current revenues for highway projects over the next 5 years? Annually, ALDOT currently only has $150 million available for the use on roadway improvement projects. This revenue will be used throughout the state on various projects. The cost of construction will be a significant factor in determining the projects to be funded. Unless a large project has federal funding to assist with construction costs, most large projects are being delayed, such as projects listed in our 50-50 agreement offer. 10, instead of a sales tax, what other taxes do we have authority to raise? Gas tax, cigarette tax, fuel tax, property tax. I've got the list of them. I think we've been through those. Is that okay? Number 11, how much of an increase would be required if those options identified in number 10? I think we've been through that. Number 12, what percent did ALDOT revenues drop, which required the reduction of projects within the 10-year plan? Overall, ALDOT's revenues have not dramatically dropped. The state has had an unrealistic plan for years. Historically, projects would be listed in a particular year for construction only to be pushed out into an outer year for future funding. Huntsville's Memorial Parkway projects have always experienced this effect, hence the 5 to 7 years worth of construction for a single overpass and or a service frontage road project to be completed. Now remember, in this, we've always had a 6-year window to do overpasses and access roads. In this, we will be able to do those in 3 years because the projects will be bid all as one project. Access roads, overpasses, all being done at one time. Maston Lake and Lily Flag Bird Springs will be a 3-year project rather than stretching us out to 6, 8, 9 years, just depending on funding availability. That is one of the most important things about this. By the year 2020, we can start rehabilitating the parkway, both North Parkway and South Parkway, because we're finished with construction. Number 13, Why did ALDOT reduce the plan proportionally across the state rather than erase all Madison County projects with the exception of one project? The ALDOT transportation plan was reduced statewide in a more realistic fundable plan. A number of factors were used to determine which projects were to be delayed or cut. Factors included type of funding available for a project, current status of project, overall cost benefit of the project. Some projects were cut and delayed due to the cost of the project. There are numerous projects that exceeded the annual $150 million budget. For example, the City of Huntsville's Moores Mill Shields Road project overpasses was cut from the plan that had a budgeted construction cost of $130 million, not including several $1 million worth of right-of-way and utility cost. Number 14, if we do fund the 50-50 joint funding agreement, who is responsible for cost overruns? Cost overruns would be split 50-50 by both groups. That is a list of questions by Councilman Kling. That is our presentation. We leave it open for questions from council, then I think you're going to open it for questions and comments from the public, right?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Council members, who would like to go first? Dr. Showers?
The explanation of the justification for road projects and the 1 cent tax, your Maston Lake, when you talk about bottleneck, citizens that come in the morning from points north, they go back out from points south, between Sparkman Drive and north of Maston Lake Road to Winchester Road. There is a tremendous effect, the same effect that you have on 72 East. You have citizens who are creeping along. My question, Mayor, is when will the Maston Lake project be done?
2000, yeah, it's going to take till the 2016-17 year to get the engineering done. 2016-17 it will start, should be finished by 2020. Is that right, Ms. Martin? Okay, thank you.
Okay, then I'm gonna have a problem with that. Now, we continue to time certain. Now, if we're gonna do the projects on the south end, I got a report last week from you that had dates and time certains on there.
Yes, sir.
And 2020 is not acceptable because the same problems that you have to the west and to the south, you have that same problem in the north.
But
Excuse me. If we're going to do this, then we got to be consistent at each one of the ends of time. I don't want the west to get freed up and the south to get freed up and the north is the way it is today. 5 years from now, it's just not going to work. Now, I understand if a tax is passed, that we're going to get the northern bypass completed to the Parkway, and we list Maston Lake, but we're not saying to the public that Maston Lake won't be done until 2020. That's just not acceptable.
Ms. Martin, you want to address the engineering of it, and this is our explanation with it, everything we've gotten from the state, is you have not, if you would let me finish.
Let me ask you this about engineering. Now, Mr. Taylor provides each one of us, the council members, with the document of capital outlay, CIP program.
Yes, sir.
All the roads and projects that are in there. 2 years ago, this council, I made a motion to take an out year to draw it back on the northern bypass. When we had some other identified monies that went away, I understand that. But if we're gonna do 2 overpasses on the south in 17, and wait until 2020 to do the same problem that we have on the north end, the people are not gonna buy that.
No, sir. Let me explain it to you.
Go ahead.
2014 is when the southern bypass is done, Lily Flag, Martin Road. Lily Flag, Bird Springs, Martin Road. The reason it is done in the 2015-16 year is because we already have 95% of the engineering done. It takes years to do this engineering. The reason that the overpasses are in 2017, the 16-17, they will start construction in 16-17. It's because it will take us that long to do the engineering to get Maston Lake done. Maston Lake is not at 95%. Can you tell us what percentage it's at, Ms. Martin?
I do not believe state's even started it. I think it was utility relocation and right-of-way.
Yeah. Between utility relocation, right-of-way, and engineering, it is a 3-year process. If you look back, and if you remember, South Parkway, Martin Road, Lily Flag, Bird Springs, we moved the utilities back several years ago. We went ahead and got ahead of that project because it was supposed to start this year. We went ahead and moved the utilities back. We purchased the right-of-way. There was not as much right-of-way to be purchased there, and we had 95% of the engineering done. In our plans that we had before they were knocked out, that road project was supposed to start in 2014. In our plans, the road project for Maston Lake was supposed to start in 2017. That was the state of Alabama's Alabama Department of Transportation plan. And no engineering has been done. We still have to get right-of-way. We still have to move utilities. We still have to do engineering on it. That's why it is not till 2017 that we started. We are finished in riding on that road in 2020. This is a 6-year period where we're doing some massive road construction, and all of these roads are done in 2020. They're finished. We're riding on them. We're not starting them. We're riding on them.
Okay, then we need to have some engineering. I thought when we did the Sparkman Drive overpass and created the nightmare at Maston Lake, that engineering was a part of engineering had already been done there.
No, sir.
Now, then, Mayor, what do we need to do then?
We need to move as quickly as we can, and as quick as
Okay,
we
now-
can in those terms with how many years?
Who is Miss Martin?
Ms. Martin.
City
Ms.
engineer.
Martin is our city engineer.
Okay,
Yes, sir.
I want to see who hear and see who I'm
Come to
hearing
the
talking.
microphone, please.
Yeah. Can, what would we have to do, Mayor, to accelerate the engineering process to start now with that process, since the south end has already got the engineering done?
Sure.
What keep us from getting the engineering done now at Maston Lake, that it will be ready to go ahead at the end of 15, the beginning of 16?
That's our time plan. And when I say in fiscal year 17, we're talking fiscal year 16, 17. So 17 is the back end. Our time plan is to get it in the 16 period of 2017. But your problem is, usually these roads take 12 years to build. I mean, because we have to go through environmental assessments, we have to move utilities, we have to buy right-of-way, we have to do engineering, we have to finish all that. Usually it's a 12-year period. We are moving as fast as we can to get these done because, quite frankly, I want to have them done before Governor Bentley gets out of office and terms out, and I want each of these projects to be started by then. That way, our agreement is just as solid as it can be. I think our agreement will be solid as to the agreement that we make between both parties, but we want to move that as quickly as possible. Am I saying that right?
That's correct. As part of the 5-year plan, there are certain responsibilities. The city's responsible for 2 of the roads, and the state is responsible for the remainder. And I can tell you that North Parkway has started. They've hired a traffic engineer to look at the alignment and the layout. And what you probably saw back when Sparkman was done was more of a conceptual plan for that area. But this 5-year plan does include the service roads for Maston Lake, as well as the overpass, as well as some access management from Maston Lake all the way to Winchester.
Okay, so when will the next phase of that process commence?
as soon as we can commit to a 5-year plan with ALDOT. Like I said, they have started the work because
Okay,
in their budget.
obviously, you're not hearing me. The part of the city that I represent has already said to me, Mayor, they're not willing to wait until 2020. The problem is there now. Maybe you all don't go north from 4 o'clock to 5:30. From Sparkman Drive, even going across the Sparkman Drive overpass, really from Max Luther all the way to Winchester Road, you got 3 miles of cars just creeping. The same thing you got on 72 West at the same time of the day. And if we're going to ask the people to do more, then we've got to do more. I just don't want us to have a project going at A and B sitting idle. I need to be able to justify that to the people.
Oh, I understand completely. And also, we have to be able to have the time to move utilities. We have to have time to purchase right away. We have to have time to do engineering to get this project going. This one does not have engineering already done. It may have a
I thought she
conceptual.
just said
said
that-
conceptual. Conceptual is not engineering. It just is an idea. This may be the way to do it.
Wait 1 minute, Mayor. Now, what she just said, she didn't say conceptual. It's already some groundwork being done. I'm seeing folk out there now taking shots, measuring. What is that about?
That is probably a part of the traffic study that's undergoing right now that the state has initiated.
Mayor, I don't want to go through anymore of read my lips. Now, we've been disappointed once already. Now, last year, this time, and the year before, 2011, 2010, we all had all of these huge expectations from read my lips. And I don't want that to happen again. Now, if I'm going to ask my people to support this tax, we've got to have some assurance that Masson Lake and the Northern Bypass and what's going to help the Parkway is completing the Northern Bypass. Because when we do that, then you're not going to have everybody from Tennessee on the Parkway.
We are talking the same thing. We are talking the same thing. We want to move it as fast as we can, as fast as physically can, but we can't move it any faster than we can get the utilities moved, the right-of-way purchased, and the engineering done. And that is the problem there. And your
Let me
plan,
ask you
your
this,
question
ma'am.
is, what is Plan B?
Okay,
plan
let's
B
look
is-
at A right now. Ms. Martin,
Yes, sir.
who does the engineer? Does the state does that part, or do we do that part?
For North Parkway at Masson Lake, it would be the state.
Or will be the state?
Yes, sir.
Okay, just as we are partnering now with the state, is it possible that our engineering department can partner with the state to accelerate that process?
Yes, sir. If they need our assistance, we will be more than happy to do that.
Okay, how do we make that happen, Mayor?
We can accelerate and work with them as close as we can. As soon as we sign an agreement, we are going to go into full mode to get all these projects going as fast as we can.
In
And
the-
if we can get it done before the 16-17 period, if we can get started on that, we will. But our cast iron agreement says that we will do these projects will be done, and these projects will be done in this order. And we will work with the state in every which way to make sure that we can move as fast as we can on this.
Okay, now, will we put a clause in the final agreement that indicates, just like we are proposing to assist the state, Mr. Cooper and the governor, that we can also have our own engineers assisting them to speed up the time set for the Maston Lake project?
We would
Can we
definitely
put
make
that in the
offer.
language?
We will definitely
In the
make-
final contracting
Yes, sir.
agreement?
We will put that in there. We will definitely make that. There's no reason not to move these as fast as we can, but we want to move these as fast as we can. If we could move them up any time, then those roads are being ridden on that much quicker. They're solving the traffic problems that much quicker. We're opening up industrial and retail development area on the Martin Luther King extension that much quicker. The quicker we can do them, the better it is. But we have $25 million a year that we can allocate to it. If we have to borrow for 2 to 3 years to do that, we can do that, but we don't want to cut into that $25 million in too many ways. But we want to move these things as fast as we can, Dr. Showers.
The 32 to 38 million, that's tentatively possible if the 1% tax passed beyond the 25 million. What are we proposing to do with that excessive money that we don't need to put in these agreed projects?
Sure. These first 4 years, if you look at the first 4 years of this project, the first 4 years have 14 million the first year, 67 million the next year, 55 million the next year, and 50, 60 million the next year. It's front-end loaded. The plan is pretty much front-end loaded so that we put our money up as quick as possible so that we can get these projects moving. The tax is projected to bring in between 32 and 35 million. 38 was the number if you had auto sales tax. We don't have auto sales tax in it, so it's 32 to 35 million dollars. The other 7 million has to be used for capital projects, and capital projects are industrial incentives in bringing in jobs. And I can assure you that that money is a necessity. The Boeing jobs that you brought in today, that had a cost to it, but it's a great thing for the community. That is what that additional $7 to $10 million is for. Plus, it is for alternate transportation methods, bike lanes, greenways, things like that. Those projects are ongoing. So that's where the extra money is scheduled to go. The first 3 to 4 years, I don't see any extra money coming out of it because we are front-end loaded and we're doing almost more than our 25 million. We'll probably be doing 30, 32 million each year.
But with the boring announcement, what better opportunity than to have that northern bypass
Oh, I assure you.
finished let me look back at my notes here. The northern bypass originally was 17.
It's moved up.
And so you're saying now it's going to go in, we're going to complete it in 14.
No, sir. No, sir. We start the northern bypass in the 16-17 year. It is completed in 20. If it can be moved forward faster, it will be moved forward faster. But the time that it takes is, there's only so much that they can do engineering, moving utilities, moving drainage, moving sewer, and all that.
But now the northern bypass, we've already spent the money on that project.
No,
the
sir.
engineering has already been done.
We have had a firm doing centerline engineering on it. How far has engineering gone on northern bypass?
Approximately 30%.
30%. We have 30% of this centerline engineering done. That tells you exactly the route that it's going to go. It does not do the engineering of the drainage ways, and moving the sewer, moving the water, moving all the other utilities that are underground, and also moving the utilities back. So we're 30% on centerline. And its price tag has now gone to $20 million.
Well, if we wait to 2020, it's going to be $40 million.
No, sir, we're going to get it done at $20 million. We're going to move fast.
But Mayor, you the mayor,
Yes, sir.
and I'm listening to you as the public is tonight. The people that I represent, they're not going to say this to you. They simply believe if you say you're going to do it, do it. They already got in the back of their mind broken promises. Now, I'm not going to be around here forever. None of us are going to be around here forever. But I need to be able to tell the folk that's going to be around here that we're going to get what we say we're going to give. And you've said to me tonight that we'll get Baston Lake and the northern bypass, MLK,
Yes, sir.
in this round where this 1% tax is going to help us do that.
Yes, sir. by 2020. And remember this, the northern bypass was not in anybody's plans before this. It was never in anybody's plans. It was our plan. We had it. We wanted it to be done, but it was not funded in any way. Now we have a funding source for it. Now it is funded, and it gives us that northern loop road around the north end of town.
Council members, next. Mr. Glenn.
Thank you, Mr. President. First of all, Mayor, I want to commend you. I know there are things that you have to do as, running the city of Huntsville. And I think it's a sorry state of affairs that you and all of us are having to deal with an issue where, I guess to paraphrase what Councilman Showers said, I direct it to the state. If you say you're going to do it, do it. And, historically, there's always been a history where, the city of Huntsville taxpayers come out on the short end. We have passed referendums to put in extra money in our school system. And as a result, under the equity funding lawsuit, we have lost tens and tens of millions of dollars that have been taken away from us because we put local support into our schools. A former school board member said we probably have lost over $200 million. Mayor, you've been a great fighter on this, and obviously, we need to do something about our roads. And it's just a lousy situation. The state had, for all these years, a 10-year plan, $450 million, then all of a sudden it goes away. During the time I've been on the council, every parkway overpass that has been constructed over, the past 20 years or so has at least 20% local money. And I don't think any other city puts that type of support in it. Governor's Drive, as you mentioned, Mayor, the widening that was needed, and that was basically all City of Huntsville tax money. University Drive, way out west, I think there's some widening projects, some things that have been done that we've had to pay for. My frustration is it's just unbelievable that here's something that's going to happen, and I guess in my mind I'm thinking of I guess what I'd call the proverbial little ladies in tennis shoes. She goes to the grocery store, she clips her coupons, she's on a fixed income, maybe she's just been hit with a big increase in her insurance premium, and we can handle it, but for her, for every $100 of groceries, that's going to be an extra $1 that's going to come out of her pocket. And I know we're all concerned, and we're all looking at ideas. And again, Mayor, you're doing the job that the people in Montgomery should be doing, because these are all state roads. None of these are city roads, and it's just unbelievable that the Huntsville, we're being penalized. I guess when the state wants to, they'll use us as their beacon to kind of brag about, look at Huntsville, Alabama. It's one of our fine cities in Alabama for industrial recruitment. But then, on a lot of things, we just come out on the short end. And I know we're all looking at ideas, trying to see what we can do. And it's just very frustrating. I guess a couple of things I just want to kind of put out on the table, at least to look at. I know we're all looking at options, grabbing and trying out things, moving them. But I got some information from Randy Taylor, our finance director, and just as a possibility, put on for consideration, a 5-cent per gallon increase in gas tax would bring in about $6 million a year. If we increase cigarette taxes by 25 cents a pack, still a big jump, that would bring in about $3 million a year. That's $9 million, and we could take that money and use that for the foundation of a bond issue that would be earmarked for this. That's a possibility. And one of the things I'm putting out about that is that the roads would be paid for largely by people who drive on the roads. Price of gasoline, it goes up and down. It's $3.15 one week. Next week it's $3.22, and then it drops to $3.18. It seems that if we did do an increase, it would kind of blend in, and after a while it's there, and people don't really pay that much attention to it. Our sales tax, it's been pointed out, it's 8 cents on the dollar. I wonder if there's a way we could take that, market that, and use that as an incentive to get people from out of town to come into Huntsville. If I'm gonna be buying a big ticket item, why should I buy it at the out-of-town Walmart if I can come into Huntsville and actually save, $10 or $15? So that's just an idea. The sales tax, it would be so much more attractive if there was a way that somehow we could separate or exempt unprepared food purchases from it. But I think you said legally we can't do that. That has to go through the state.
Yes, sir.
Nothing we can do. Well, anyway, I'm listening for ideas. Other council members may have ideas, and I'm certainly in a learning mode on this. But there's nothing easy about what we're doing. But again, you got 6 elected officials, and primarily, primarily the mayor, and we're doing the job. We're talking about state roads that should be done by the State Department of Transportation. Everybody in this room pays taxes that go down to state government, and if we could just get some sort of fairness, we wouldn't even be here tonight. But it's just an unbelievable situation that the state government does this to the city of Huntsville, and we're the city that they often brag about and use as their star in the state. But thank you for the good work. You and your staff have been very upfront, gotten me all the information. I think it's been very helpful to me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Olszewski?
Yeah, real quick. First of all, Mayor, Bill's already went there, but it's phenomenal staff work. You all have answered all the questions, and I'll say, Bill, I appreciate you leading the effort on all the questions that you've asked. And I appreciate being on the MPO, because I got to watch A-Trip live, and to see how you tried to fight the fight on that. And we won as a Northern Alabama. When it's all said and done, we won as Northern Alabama. We didn't win as Huntsville, but we won as Northern Alabama. But there's dirt in there, and there's James Record. There's other things in there. So, I just want to leave it at that. Mayor, I appreciate the bond analogy, because I think that's lost on a lot of people. The amount of extra we pay if we went the bond route. And, what we need is to pay more interest. I want to make sure I got this number right, because I'm getting asked this question a lot. 3.5 of the 8% we owe right now. 3.5 of the 8% brings in about $137 million, somewhere in that ballpark, which is about 54% of our budget.
Yes, sir.
Okay. This 1 more percent would bring in 30. So 32 to 35.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. And I just want to make sure I had those numbers right. I think I know the answer, but I want to make it public. Capital industrial. Okay, it didn't probably go over most people's heads, but it's very important, I think, again, just our own roads. We have a requirement for roads that score over 40, which are already in bad shape. 30 is when we should be looking at them, but when they go over 40, they're in bad shape. Just to do our 40 roads, if I'm not mistaken, from Terry Hatfield, that's about a $17 million clip, and we got 3.2 to get after. Now, you did get a 6 back 2 years ago, and I got it, and I've gotten my share of that, and I'm comfortable with that. But
Sure.
And they've been great at taking care of the priorities. What I'm getting at is I want to make sure when we say capital industrial, down the road, I understand 4 years, I understand 5 years, but we get into 6, 7, and 8. Are we allowed to use any of that money for repaving our own roads, or is that not considered?
Not considered capital.
Yeah.
Your ordinance reads, the remaining revenue shall be expended for the cost of new long-lived city capital assets or long-lived improvements of city capital assets consistent with the city's 10-year capital plan or economic development incentives.
Because although they seem like little roads, they're actually very big roads. I got a heck of a time with Hobbs and Bell Road right now. That I got them in. It's being worked by Mr. Hatfield, but I was wanting to figure that out. So anyway, you've answered all the questions that Bill's asked, and half of those I was in the concurrence of asking them all, and appreciate your effort and what your staff has done.
And one thing I would like to make sure council understands, part of this, as soon as that 32 to $35 million starts coming in as budgeted in, we have to meet some capital reserve requirements that are part of our reserve requirements. a very small portion of this, but a small portion will be moved to the reserve fund because it has to be there for our reserve requirements. I think, Councilman Culver, you remember, and as finance chairman, that we have to keep certain amount of reserves there. This will give us a bigger budget, and then the percentage will knock it up just a little bit. So a portion of that will have to go there, and that's in your ordinance.
Mr. Culver?
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I promise to be brief. I just want to say that all of the comments and concerns as espoused by my colleagues here are very important to not only their districts, but to the city of Huntsville, as mine are to my district and the city. Mayor, while it's unfortunate that we do have to implement an increase in our sales tax, you know, especially in view of the present condition of the economy, this 1% increase is by far the best solution for our concerns. As I'm talking to my constituents, my district runs west of the city. It begins just east of Jordan Lane, and it goes west, surrounds Madison, and it goes into Limestone County. I live 10 miles from this building. I'm in the city limits of Huntsville, but 10 miles west by way of the Interstate Research Park and University Drive, 8 miles if you go up University Drive. If you're going east in the morning during rush hour, there's a gridlock. If you're attempting to go west, and I've said this before, but without regards to what artery, whether it's I-565, whether it's University Drive 72, whether it's Old Monrovia Road, whether it's Old Madison Pike, there is a gridlock. And for the residents in District 5, I mean, this is a grand opportunity for the entire city of Huntsville, but I'm looking at it more so through the eyes of my constituents in District 5. And I know unequivocally when we 4-lane Providence west from University Drive, west from Providence to County Line Road, that's going to take a lot of traffic off of those other arteries like Capshaw and Old Madison Pike. Hopefully with the interchange at I-565, it's going to eliminate some of the traffic gridlock on I-565. So it's just a grand opportunity, and I just hope that people can grasp that. I had a discussion tonight with one of my constituents, Mr. Peters, and he made a very good point as it relates to, I don't want to steal your thunder, but as it relates to doing this perhaps for a 5-year period. But I did hear you say, Mayor, that we have another $508 million worth of road projects that are not included in this particular $250 million project that we're working on now. So, I mean, there is going to be a future need that still has to be met, and we have no idea what the conditions of our state are going to be like in 5 years. Hopefully they'll be good, especially with improvements like Boeing coming to Huntsville and some of the other developments. But I think this is an opportunity that we cannot afford to miss. So I commend you likewise and your staff putting together this plan, this contract for the state to give us that matching funding on this $250 million. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Culver. Mayor Battle, I appreciate you willing to stand there and answer all our questions. Most have been asked. I want to go back to the 5-year no sunset. I've been listening to my constituents, and several have made very good arguments that we should, after we reach 125 million, we should either renew it or revote, the council, so the public has another opportunity to voice their concerns on the projects, the $500 million of projects you see. And I was just going to encourage the council that I'm going to work on some language and present that next Thursday. It may be a renewal vote. It may be a
Mr. President, I could support that. I've heard from
confirmation, and I'll have to and obviously need staff and legal people to help me with that. But I agree with the mayor. I think those projects are going to be needed, but I do think the public deserves another shot at talking to us, and I think we'll have a different council at that time, and then they need to be able to weigh in on this as well. So that's an amendment I'm going to work on this week. And if I could get some consensus, does 125 million sound better than the 5 years, or the best way I can work it out? I'm thinking the 125 million serves our purpose. So if we get 125 million after 3 years, we confirm it. If we get it after 5 years, we confirm it if we want to, to continue with the tax. And I'll have to work with what the bond rating agencies are going to think of that, and I'll have to ask a lot of questions. But that's what I intend to come back with, 125 million kind of cap, and then a council will have to say, yes, we want to go ahead with the sales tax if we do this. Is that okay with that type of language? Okay, I will work on that. Mayor, do you see any problems with that?
Could we work with our city finance director on that to make sure that, see what the bonding agency's
Yes.
gonna look at it and see how that works? There may be some ways to do that fit and provide for everything that we need.
Yeah, I don't want to find out unseen circumstances later. But if we have to do it every year, I think this council will be glad to do it. That's what we do. We vote on local issues, and we'll stand up here and vote. So, but I think the 125 million is what I'm hearing most from my constituents. Is when you get that 125 million, we want another shot at this.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we all need to look at is that we are going to have future road needs. This is not the end of it. These 7 projects are just the start of it. If we're a growing community, if we're going to have the Boeings coming in, if we're going to have the other projects coming in, we have 34 different projects sitting on the books right now, which could bring in hundreds of people. And the good thing is a lot of them we're talking about are production jobs. They diversify our economy, something that we've been looking to do for a long time. We are going to need some of that money for industrial incentives. That's been in the bill all along. I think that we need to at least make sure that we have the 5 years of funding in place, and then have a council vote. We could look at it as having a council vote, yay or nay. Do we keep on doing this? Do we not? Do we see 5 years worth of road projects out there that need to be done? One thing I would definitely like to make sure, sunset or not, is that we keep in there that we do at least a minimum of $25 million a year in roads. The first 2 or 3 years, I think we're going to be spending 30, almost most of it, in the roads. We're going to have to catch up our reserve fund, and then we're going to, have to make sure that the first 2 or 3 years that we have enough money in there to do the roads that we have in line. So it is front end loaded, so it will take, it will go through pretty fast.
Okay. Well, Mr. Olszewski, then we'll go.
Real quick, because I want to make, Mayor, hold on, just 1 sec. I heard you say, President, this is 120, it's 250.
Well, 125 from us.
I got it, but, no matter how you cut the mustard, it was 200 and some, when you did all 5 sets of all our roads, it was $208
million. We had $32 million that we could work with the state on a future project. And if certain industrial projects hit, there's a $30 million project that may have to be done just for an industrial project. So
I know some folks can hear 3 years in there, and you can't get to 208 in 3 years. It's how you cut the mustard.
Yeah, our 208 is 104 is our portion of the 208.
Right.
Okay, let's see.
I guess you
we'll
could
start
get
at the
it that
end
way.
and come back down.
My
So,
bad.
Ms. Culver.
Thank you, Mr. President. As we're collecting data, I'm interested in knowing how many cities have increased their sales tax and maybe went backwards with it. I'm
Sure.
curious to know if there are other cities comparable to Huntsville that have done that, and what were the consequences and that kind of thing.
Sure, and I think you can see from the chart there that the other big cities in the state of Alabama are all at 10%. We're at 9. We will be at 9%. I think you can also see from the chart there that everybody around us is now at 9%. Madison went up, as I said, 6 months ago. Arab went up 5 months ago to the 9% level. And we'll send you the rest of the information.
Okay, great, thanks.
Mr.
Thank you,
Kling,
Mr. President.
did you have anything?
Since we're looking at, all this has to do with capacity on the roads, I'm wondering if there's any study that Tommy Brown could do to look at you know, if there would be a drop-off in the capacity if we were to expand the public transit. I know you gotta look at, you know, what's economically feasible, but the idea is if we had a bigger transit system, would that get more people off the streets, on cars and into buses? Also, and I'm gonna say something, I know it's gonna sound very impolite, and I don't mean for it to, but, we've just been through a very bad experience with the state where basically they backed out of a commitment that they had. I remember that there's a legal provision where, and I think you kind of touched on it, Mayor, when a governor's term ends, even if it's the same governor and that governor is reelected, we had a situation, I think, with Governor Riley in his second term and with the highway director, but, you know, contracts that are not underway, I think they kind of go off the board. So, you know, you got to get them locked in. And I know you're going to be very vigilant about this and whatever we do. But again, we just want to make sure we don't get caught, you know, by surprise again from the state. Also, I'm just kind of curious, looking, is there anything that our legislative delegation can do to help us with this as far as more road money? I was looking to ask some of them, but I don't see any of them in here. Must be a good football game on tonight. But is there anything further that the legislative delegation could have been doing to help us?
You'll have to talk to legislative delegation.
Okay, I just didn't know if you had any answer. Okay, well, thanks, but again, it's just a crazy situation. If the state of Alabama would, you know, they want to use us to bring in, you know, for their catcher's mitt to bring in Boeing, and then, you know, where are they when the road projects come? And, you know, it's time, you know, for them to pony up and take care of state roads. Just unbelievable.
Dr. Showers?
Well, the answer to that is because they believe that Huntsville is going to take the slack, as we've been doing. This is nothing new. Mr. Clayton, you've been here as long as I have. Many projects that we have partnered with the state. This is not the first time we've done this. But I do want to say tonight, as we end this, that I represent some people in this city that do not want the tax increase. For the public, on Tuesday, the 17th, Mayor, I'm going to hold a town meeting at the Shower Center. I hope your schedule will permit you to come up and speak to the people that's going to come out at 6 o'clock if you're in the city. And but on Tuesday, December the 17th at 6 o'clock, we're going to give the people on the north end an opportunity to make their expressions. I've got many calls, some for and some against. And as a representative, I do want to listen to them. And I'm going to say tonight, everybody is not willing to pay some more on taxes. Mayor, I would be remiss if I would not say this. You've done a good job. I believe that the governor has come to the table because of the campaign this summer. You did that, and I commend you, as these others have said, the staff, your team, for getting us to that. So I hope you'll be available Tuesday to come up to the Shower Center and speak, bring the people, the team, and shots, any others that we need to have to answer questions that we may have.
Good.
I'm going to need your help.
Be there.
Because right now, the folks are telling me, Showers, we don't want any tax. And there are some hurting people in this city. A lot of us are here tonight in support, and that's good. And the need is there. And I don't want to deduce that. The need is there. And certainly I do want my roads done. But I do want to hear the voice of the people, and that's what's going to happen Tuesday night, December the 17th at 6 o'clock at the Shower Center. Thank you very much.
Ms. Clayton, did you want to mention your town meeting?
Thank you, Mr. President. I guess I'm having a senior moment. Next Monday night will be my monthly town meeting, and I've already arranged for Shane Davis, assuming he's feeling okay, to be there to answer questions. Obviously, this will be talked about. And, you know, I'm looking forward to hearing from people. Monday night, 7 o'clock at the library, meeting room A. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mayor Battle.
Okay. One last comment, guys. You know, I hear everybody loud and clear. None of us want to be here. It'd be much, much easier for every one of us to say, hey, this is a state problem. We're going to let this be a state problem, and we're going to sit in our chairs, and every time somebody calls, say, call your state legislature, call your state senator, call the governor, call the director of transportation. But this is one of those times when the state problem becomes our problem. And when it becomes our problem, that's when we can't get people from here to there. We can't have industrial development. We can't have a quality of life that is, part of that quality of life is that 18-minute commute to and from work. And in my mind, this is one of those times that we can't ignore and pass that off, even though it's not our problem. Their problem has become our problem, and now it's time for us to step up. It's called part of leadership, and it's not an easy thing to do, but it's something that we all have to do. And I want to thank y'all for considering this and for being part of that leadership team that has helped the city of Huntsville. So thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Mr. President,
Dr. Showers.
just a moment of privilege. I would be remiss. There's a gentleman out in the audience that I just want to acknowledge his presence. All of you up here remember him, Tom Cunningham. He's sitting out there, and I just want to acknowledge his presence. Meant so much to us when he served us as engineer. And Tom, just good to have you with us tonight.
Welcome back. We're going to now listen to the public. When I call your name, we're going to try to do it on 3 minutes. We've got approximately 20 people signed up. After the people, we've gone through the people signed up, we'll take any comments from people that have not signed up. But 3 minutes will get us to about an hour. So we'll take a break at 9:15 and reassess, see how many people want to talk, and decide what we're going to do. So let's go for an hour, and then we'll talk about it. So first up is Ron Petit.
Good evening, Mr. President, council members, and Mayor Battle. Thank you for allowing me to be here tonight. I am Ron Petit, Chairman of the Board of Directors of the Huntsville-Madison County Chamber of Commerce. And on behalf of the Chamber, I want to speak briefly, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak briefly before the council tonight on the proposed tax increase and the accompanying plans to improve our roads. As you know, the mission of the Chamber is to support the long-term economic growth and vitality of our community. And so a road system that facilitates the efficient movement of our workforce and commerce into and out of Huntsville is very vitally important to our future growth. And we also know that the primary source of funding for road construction, the tax on gasoline and diesel fuel, has been flat to declining, and fuel efficiency has been improving as total mileage driven declines. At the same time, the cost of building roads has effectively doubled over the last 15 years. And so as a result, the Chamber was very concerned when the Alabama Department of Transportation reevaluated their plans in light of these revenue challenges and increasing cost, and removed several of our critical road projects from their plan. We know our area population continues to grow, placing greater pressure on these critical arterial roads that feed our primary places of employment. And so delaying these key road projects, we know, will inevitably lead to increased congestion, negatively impacting our quality of life, and importantly, our ability to attract job-creating economic development projects in the future. So we were pleased to learn of ALDOT Director Cooper's extension of an offer to share half of the $250 million cost on these 7 major road projects for our community over the next 5 years. And we view this as a strategic opportunity for our community. We are aware that the city's revenues do not provide adequate funding to support the $25 million in annualized expenditures to match the state's proposed cost share arrangement. And it's important to note that the mayor, his leadership team, and the council have done and continue to do an excellent job managing the city's resources and expenses, as evidenced by the recently reaffirmed AAA rating. And so in order to provide the city with the additional revenues necessary to accelerate these road projects, the Chamber supports the 1-cent sales tax increase. It'll be more than enough to match the state's funding requirement for the critical road, related infrastructure, and economic development needs. We also note that the 1-cent increase would make our city's combined sales tax rate at 9%, the same as other urban areas surrounding Huntsville, and equal to or less than many peer communities around the southeast. And so in closing, please know that the Chamber supports the initial list of road projects and the 1 cent increase to the City of Huntsville sales tax to support these infrastructure projects improvements, and we do encourage the council to enact an ordinance to implement this increase. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Petit. Mr. Charlie Burris, followed by Mr. Don Beck, then Mr. Jerry Cox. Mr. Burris.
Thank you, Mr. Russell. Mayor, City Council, citizens, good evening. I am Charlie Burris. I'm a board member of the Huntsville Committee of 100. We are an organization of 230 CEOs and professionals committed to economic development, public education, and cooperative government. The Committee of 100 board has voted to endorse Mayor Battle's proposed 1 cent sales tax increase to fund roads and economic development package. And we applaud the mayor's leadership in negotiating a contract with the state to provide a generation of new roads for the city of Huntsville. As an organization that focuses on long-term strategies to improve economic development, our board believes that this plan is fair, strategic, and imperative to continue our success in workforce and job recruitment. It is fair in providing funds for providing funds that come from citizens in 14 surrounding counties who use the roads and spend monies in our community. It strategically addresses key roads that are most used by our local and regional workforce and keeps us competitive with retail sales with surrounding cities that already have a 9% sales tax. We also value the strategy of a binding contract with the state that includes funding timelines to protect the investment of the city and ensures that our roads are built in a timely fashion. This plan also includes imperative funds for economic development, opportunities, and new roads in the future. Let me be clear, no one likes increased taxes, but this is an urgent local need, and the alternative is relatively grim. If the city of Huntsville turns down the state offer, the ALDOT Director says there will be no new funding for major local roads for at least a decade due to declining gas tax revenue. We cannot afford this kind of a major step back at this point. To the members of the council, we thank you for your thoughtful consideration on this important issue, and we hope to support your vision and leadership in voting yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Burris. Mr. Don Beck, followed by Mr. Cox and Mr. Burnett.
Don Beck, concerned citizen, of course. I very much support the efforts being made by the mayor and hopefully the city council. Spoke a little bit last week that the situation with the State Department of Transportation budget is grim, and they know it. And Mr. Kling was absolutely right that we find ourselves in a not so good situation. But you have to look back, or you have to look forward and say, we want to be progressive and try to solve the problem. I think with the A-Trip dollars that came to North Alabama, coupled with the offer put on the table by the Department of Transportation, I think that the city of Huntsville really needs to take advantage of it. We really would be foolish not to do this. The money will go somewhere else to another municipality if we don't take advantage of it. And like the two speakers before me, that economic development is key. Mayor Battle said there's 30 some odd projects being worked on right now. You know, a lot of these roads should have already been worked on 10, 15 years ago. They certainly need it now, and they will certainly need it a decade from now. It's considering the situation that we find ourselves in with the state budget, it would be we'd be remiss not to move forward on this. And I understand Mr. Kling's concerns about a regressive sales tax. I do believe that on one of the slides, the 25% of the sales tax revenue that we currently receive comes from folks outside of the city limits of Huntsville. I don't know that there's any other more equitable way to try to finance this than doing that. I do agree a bond issue to have that much interest paid that's probably not the best way to go in my opinion. And I think we really ought to look at it. The gasoline tax, it's too easy for folks in Athens, Decatur, Madison to fill up at home and not have to buy gasoline in the city of Huntsville. I don't think that's very equitable considering that we are the regional hub for the area. And that's all. I hope that you think long and hard about it, and I hope that y'all end up supporting it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bex. Mr. Cox, followed by Mr. Burnett and Mr. Brashers.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, again, the mayor is certainly to be commended for his aggressive actions on our road needs. Mr. President, at the last council meeting, I was the one that initiated the idea of the fuel tax. Back of an envelope calculations that I did, I thought it was going to take about 5 cents. But there's no one that has more respect for Randy Taylor than I. And if Randy Taylor says it's going to take 25 cents, it's going to take 25 cents. So there goes that. Based upon my work history, just a couple of concerns that I have. With this aggressive program, does the road building capability exist locally for such an aggressive schedule? Also, I'm concerned, again, based upon my work experience, has there been sufficient time and effort to cost out these projects and to develop realistic schedules? Mr. President, with the extra amount of money that beyond the $25 million, I would recommend to the council that instead of all of it be going to capital improvements, there are some residents in Huntsville, all the residents in Huntsville will get either a direct or an indirect benefit from the Restore Our Roads program. But there are residents of certain areas of the town that will receive only indirect benefits. To provide those residents with more direct benefits to this sales tax increase and to permit all work commuters to benefit, I ask that you have some of the other $9 million directed to expand Huntsville shuttle bus service to Saturdays at a slightly reduced routes from what exists in the daily ones. Now, the city did a study, and it shows that the ridership on Saturdays for the shuttle bus system would be 60% of the weekday ridership. And the yearly cost will be about $198,000 less any fares that are collected. So let's make this sales tax increase benefit all workers, those that's going to be riding these roads, that are driving on these roads that you're going to repair, but let's benefit also those workers that takes public transportation to get to work. I heard from one of those people that they have to work almost 3 hours on a Saturday just to pay the taxi fare to get to and from the work. Whereas if the shuttle bus was available to them, they'd pay $1. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Cox.
Mr. President?
Mr. Kling.
Just following up on Mr. Cox, in addition, icing on the cake, that would also take some of that capacity off the streets that I was talking about earlier.
Sure. And Mr. Cox, I know you asked a couple questions. Ms. Cox, we'll get you those answers maybe after the hour. I'm trying to keep a list so we don't interrupt everybody and everybody has a chance to speak. Mr. Burnett?
Okay. Jerry Burnett, 2405 Green Hill Drive, Huntsville.
Welcome.
Thank you for the privilege of speaking. But unlike speakers before me, I hate to rain on your parade. But I don't not object to the 1 cent sale tax. But I do object to the fact that it becomes necessary to ask the citizens to pay an extra tax, 1 cent tax, when the President of the United States has a transportation and housing bill laying on his desk that would provide funding to fix our highways and our streets and our hood, homes, and our congressmen vote against the bill that would provide the very funding that we're looking for money to repair the streets, which I think it's a good idea to pay up that 1 cent. I think we ought to pay a dime. But then we ought to let the citizens know the reason why we're paying it is that we got a congressman that refused to help pass a bill that would provide the funding for this project. I think that's a shame that it becomes necessary. We should be going to Congress. The bill is laying on the president's desk, been passed by the Senate, and it sits there waiting for Congress to sign it, and all the Alabama except for one, vote against it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Burnett. Mr. Brushers, followed by Anson Knowles, followed by Micah Bullard.
Thank you, Mr. President, Mayor, members of the City Council. Appreciate your time. Everyone else here, I know we all would rather be home with the state delegation watching that football game, Mr. Kling. And I hate to be a killjoy, but I'm going to be the first person to sit up here and say, I don't want this 1% sales tax. And I've got some reasons why. And Mr. Showers, you mentioned it. The current economy is such that, yes, it's only 1%, but on some people, that's a lot of money that will hit them. And the economic time we're in, yes, we seem to have a fairly stable economy here, but there are people in our community, and not just in Mr. Showers' district, but in all the districts, who are struggling to meet their financial requirements on a monthly basis. We have a huge problem with the Affordable Care Act that citizens in Huntsville are going to have to be dealing with starting next month. Those are the issues that meet us at the house, at our kitchen table. I've read some studies from Wharton School of Business, Harvard, and Stanford, which says that when you take into account federal, state, county, city, property, sales tax, that's just part of the taxes we pay, that we have a 50% income that the citizens pay yearly in all these taxes. So people who are out there working hard to take care of their families, we have so many taxes. I mean, I was shocked to read some of the stuff you were talking about, the different areas where we have taxes. It's a burden. Huntsville, and I hope I'm right on this, you can correct me if I'm wrong, Huntsville currently spends, and this is according to the Alabama Policy Institute, Huntsville spends $390 per person on public works. That's $90 million. If you take this $25 million, and if you assume that we have 180,000 citizens of Huntsville, we now go from $390 to $529 per citizen. That's a burden. That's a big burden. Federal debt's a big burden, but this is local. This is at our kitchen table that people have to look at. You know, I'm not the CEO of a company. I'm not part of the Chamber of Commerce. I'm not an organization. I'm just an individual who looks every month and tries to determine, how do I handle my bills? And we go from 8 to 9. And yes, you're right. We are 8%. We're better than the rest of the cities in Huntsville. Cities in Alabama. But I know people that live in Decatur and in Scottsboro that when they're over here, they make a point of buying here because it's cheaper here than going home. When they go home, they know it costs more there, so they spend their money here. I understand that this past year that money was given to the Twickenham Square, and to Belk to move them. So that's $15 million that was allocated funds. If I'm wrong, I apologize. I think that's what I read. There's money that we could have put into roads. And Mayor, you had an interesting conversation with the news media about a new city hall. $30 million, they say, it's going to take to build a new city hall. All I'm hearing is we need money for this and we need money for this and that. But my question is, you're always coming back to the citizens here saying, give us more, give us more. When are we going to have a situation where we have people who are interested in solutions that say we're giving back instead of taking? We're a representative form of government. We're now a true democracy. You represent us. I'm in Mr. Kling's district. He's probably tired of hearing me scream and holler about things. But I hope you would seriously consider, and yes, I understand the need for roads. I understand all these things. But at some point, we've got to stop taking the money out of the citizens' hands who need it and always coming back to that same will over and over and over again. There's got to be a situation where we, as individuals, as the leaders of our community, do something to reduce that burden. I'll close with this. You remember the Boston Tea Party? They got really upset because of an intrusive government on the control of their lives and increasing taxes. I wonder what they would say about the way we live our lives these days and allowing the government to control so much of us. I wonder what these brave men and women who created this country would think about what we've become. Mr. President, Mayor, City Council, thank you for your time.
Sure. Anson Knowles, followed by Michael Bullard and Albert Peters.
Mr. Mayor, council members, my name is Anson Knowles. I've been listening to the arguments for and against an increase in the Huntsville City sales tax rate. Like Mr. Cooper, I'm an accountant, and I like to balance the debits with the credits. And because of that, I've gone out to the Huntsville City website and retrieved your combined statement of revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balance that's available to the public. And I have got a copy of that right here. And on your website, you have 2001 and 2012 listed on there and the years in between. And these statements represent the newest, most recent, and the oldest information available. According to these statements, the city's annual revenue has increased from $177,941,688 to $300,867,126 between 2001 and 2012. During the same time period, the city's annual expenditures have grown from $208,738 to $363,857,892. Based on this information provided in your audited annual financial report, it can be concluded that the city raises about $123 million more every year than it did in 2001. The city also spends about $155 million more than it did. And I think that this council and mayor's inability to find the additional $25 million per year in spending cuts shows a lack of leadership. Raising taxes is the easy way out of a budgetary problem. Furthermore, to claim that the state is to blame for this tax increase within Huntsville is an example of passing the blame from this council to a higher authority. The last time I checked, when I vote for my city council member and mayor, I expect them to not pass the buck on blame for city tax policy. Don't raise the sales tax rate. Pull out your budget and cut 1/5 of the city's growth in spending since 2011, and you'll gain the savings necessary to meet the capital improvement and infrastructure needs you are discussing. what if the 1% tax increase results in lower tax collection due to decline in retail sales? What part of the budget will you cut then to prepare these roads that you're discussing? Mobile recently increased its sales tax rate, and their overall sales tax collection declined. I'm also curious, the Chamber of Commerce, BizPac, campaign contributors have been up here talking tonight, and I want to know if you're going to listen to the needs of the citizens or the needs of your campaign donors. And that's all I had to say this evening. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Micah Bullard, followed by Albert Peters and Walt Hennessy. Micah?
First of all, I'd like to thank the mayor and the council for their leadership in this effort. I'm here speaking on behalf of Associated Builders and Contractors of North Alabama. We are 200 member companies strong. We support this as an investment in the city of Huntsville. This is the best opportunity I have seen happen to this city in a very long time. If you look at the other cities on the chart, they've already raised their taxes. They're already spending that money, and they don't have the money for the roads. So here we are, one of the best managed cities in America. We hadn't gone there yet. Here we are, we're gonna raise 1% more, which is $10 a thousand. You realize that cost of living is $30 a thousand every year? I mean, 1% is nothing. And let me, before I forget it, I want to address this about cutting it off. Dr. Showers, don't let them do it. Because if they cut it off, then when we get down the road 3 years, they won't have the money to do the engineering on the next road you need. Okay? So go ahead and keep it in place so that you can always be looking forward, because if you can't be looking forward, you can't spend that money to do it. So it can't stop. Huntsville's not stopping. The roads are not going to stop being built. We have plenty of local talent here that can build these roads. I look at it as a way of putting people to work. You know, we talk about how hard everybody's got it. One of the big problems they got is they don't have a job. Think of all the jobs this is going to create, not just for the roads, but all the support people that support those road builders, the cleaners and the food places and the grocery stores and the gas stations. I mean, there's so much trickle down to this that goes back into the community that it would be asinine not to do it. So I just want to thank you for your courage. I want to thank you for your leadership. It would be much easier not to do it, but I can see exactly why you are. Thank you for your vision.
Thank you. Mr. Albert Peters, followed by Mr. Hennessy and Mr. Mingo.
Albert Peters, 1701 Jeanette Circle. I think most everybody I've heard say anything recognizes that this increase in tax results in a little bigger government. It may not be much, but the trend is up, up, up. The government's getting bigger, and the amount of money the citizens have to spend is getting smaller. So you need to recognize that, and I think you do. There is a need. I've been on these roads. I avoid certain roads at certain times because it would be gridlock. There is a need. It's a state responsibility, and perhaps temporarily stepping in to deal with a problem that's a state problem is something you don't have any other choice. There are two concerns I want to address. One is that the money be spent for roads. And I've heard some things here tonight that indicate to me that all the money is not going to be spent for roads. $25 million per year, and yet the sales increase on the charts, I noticed it was 30 to 32 million, and now, no, 30 to 34 million, and now the figures changed. It's somewhere, I guess you don't really know, but 32 to 35 million. I would like for you to stipulate in any agreement the council makes with the mayor and the mayor with the state, well, they won't be concerned about that 10 to 15 million or 10 million, up to 10 million extra per year. You need to make sure that you can tell the public that all of this money is being spent for roads, is really being spent for roads, and not, as the chart said, for capital or economic development. I don't know what that is, but this money ought not to be spent for that. It ought to be spent for roads. The other concern I have is that we don't know what the state might be willing to do 5 years from now. We don't have an agreement with them to match the 25 million that would be coming from, or the 30 million, or the 32 million, or the 35 million. It's coming from this 1 cent sales tax. You ought to do two things. One, you ought to make sure that you say that all this money is spent for roads, and that if the tax is to begin on March the 1st of 2014, that it end on the last day of February of 2019. Now, the state may be in a position to go back to this or what they had said, $450 million over 10 years. We won't need the $250 million for 5 years. And so I ask you to do two things again to summarize. One, spend all the money that comes from an additional 1 cent tax on roads. And two, end it in 5 years from the date it starts, or one day before you started it. Please do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Walt Hennessy, followed by Mr. Mingo and Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. President. Council members, Mr. Mayor, thank you for the opportunity to address you tonight. First of all, speaking on behalf of the Huntsville South Civic Organization, we have endorsed your effort for the 1 cent sales tax. So for this one-time opportunity for the matching funds from the state, we endorse that position. Speaking to you as someone who hopes to be sitting up there this time next year, I would like to call for Councilman Russell kind of hit it on the head. I think we need to have a rediscussion about the use of these funds after this $125 million matching funds are spent. So I'd like to see at the end of that time have a rediscussion, perhaps even consider the citizens voting to make sure that this fits into the argument for the future of the city. But I think we do need to have that argument. Another thing that I wanted to put on, and I'll be brief because I know the hour's late, but another thing that I wanted to put on your radar screen was when Grissom moves to the west side of the parkway, the only ingress and egress is going to be Weatherly Road. And there's going to be a huge traffic jam right there at the intersection going under the parkway of Weatherly and the access roads there on the parkway. And I would like for the city to consider somewhere down the road, now that we're talking about road money, there's about a 3-mile stretch that might fit in with that southern bypass plan, going from where the high school is going to be built, going south down to Hobbs Road. That's less than 3 miles, and that would be a nice artery to relieve some of the pressure that's going to be felt in the subdivisions around there. And also, when the new rooftops start being built, which it will happen, this will give a nice artery to go in the north-south direction that will probably mesh in with the southern bypass as it develops. Last of all, I'd like to wish you all a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. Mr. Mingo, followed by Mr. Johnson and Mr. Hudson.
Good evening. I'm Fred Mingo. I'm speaking just as a private citizen from southeast Huntsville. I think the bottom line has been well laid out here that if you want good roads, you have to pay for them. It's just an undeniable fact of life. I note with some irony that there is an exemption for car purchases, even though people who buy cars are going to be among the primary beneficiaries of better roads.
Excuse me.
I also understand that because cars are a big ticket item, there's good reason maybe for that exemption. When I came here tonight, I was going to suggest that before we give an exemption to autos, we give an exemption to the purchase of food and groceries. I've since learned this evening that that's a state law, and we're somewhat handcuffed there. But since we're talking about long-term road projects, I think the city of Huntsville should take the lead among other cities in this state to get that corrected. Just as a matter of perspective, and I don't know how many people know this, but 37 states do not tax food at all. 11 states tax food at a reduced rate or offer tax credits for those who are the poorest to get some of that back. That leaves only Alabama and Mississippi as the poster children for regressive taxation. And I know this doesn't have a lot to do with the issue at hand immediately, but I think it would be in the benefit of everyone in this state if people such as you on the city council start to take a stance to get that situation changed. Because as it turns out, the people who are hardest hit by this tax increase are in general going to be the one who benefit least from it. So that is all I would ask that the city council consider. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson, followed by Mr. Hudson and Mr. Toth. Mr. Johnson.
President, Mr. Mayor, City Councilman, I appreciate the opportunity to discuss the roads. I don't think anybody in the room is against good roads. It's just a matter of how do you pay for it. 1% sales tax equals 28.57% increase in the city's share of the sales tax. Every penny taken away is creeping socialism. The higher the taxes go, the less freedom the people have to do with their own money. So we've got to be very careful in taxing more, taxing more. There's a lot of people in the private sector in which I work are fed up with paying taxes at every level. It's hard to want to go to work when you're giving half of your income away to the government every day. Work every other day for the government, not just the city, but all levels of government. I noticed on your map over there, you've got Birmingham and Montgomery, 10%. If we're trying to make Huntsville like one of those cities, maybe I better be making plans to move, because we don't need that type of government. And their roads are not as good as what we have presently in Huntsville. In the private sector, when you don't have enough money to go around, you have to prioritize how you spend your money. Now, there's been some mention tonight of things that the city of Huntsville is spending money on that probably don't take as high priority as roads do. They're pretty high priority. So, my recommendation, you need a plan B. Let's take the city budget and let's cut out enough of the programs that should be lesser priority than road building and fund the roads ahead of those other programs. And Councilman Kling mentioned that a gasoline tax would raise, what, $9 million, some number. So the savings
Gas
that you
and cigarette.
do what?
5 cent gas, 25 cent per pack cigarette.
Well, whatever. There's other methods instead of increasing the sales tax that could fund the necessary road improvements. So my recommendation is, and I'll be glad to help you for free to cut out some of the fat in the budget. From my perception, I'm a private sector guy. I'm not a government mentality guy, although I do have some government budgeting experience. So I understand the process. My recommendation is don't add a penny sales tax. That's 28.5% increase of sales tax revenue for the city. Don't do that. It's regressive. Councilman Showers correctly mentioned it's hardest on the people that are least can afford to pay for it. And it's not just in his district, but that's in all the districts across the city. So if cut out the unnecessary or the lesser priority of expenditures within the city budget and put the roads up there where they need to be. And in the alternative, if you do elect to go with a 1% sales tax increase, put a sunset on it, only for the road expenditures, but put a sunset on it after that, and let the people vote on it. Let them decide if they want to go forward with a 1% increase. Somebody correctly stated, if you got an option to buy items at 8% sales tax or 10%, I know where I'm going to buy them, and I know where most people are going to buy them. You're going to buy them where the taxes are the least. So please, 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 do not raise the sales tax. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Hudson, followed by Mr. Toth and Mr. Latimer.
I sure appreciate the opportunity to come up here and speak this evening. I just want to thank Mayor Battle and his staff for the courage to put this in front of us. I am a concerned citizen, and I am for this proposal. Let's not miss out on the opportunity to get $125 million from the state. They're helping us build these roads that we so desperately need. The gentleman that read the financial statement from 2001 to 2012, I'm proud of the growth of Huntsville. Let's continue to grow and grow it in the right way. Take care of our infrastructure so the Boeings of the world continue to come here. I grew up in Birmingham. I don't want to have the same infrastructure problems they have, like driving on 280. We want to avoid that because once you get behind the curve, it's almost impossible to catch back up. So I appreciate your courage, and like I said, I'm all for it. Let's continue to grow Huntsville the right way. And I'm going to be very brief because I'm ready to get downtown and spend a little bit of my money there. So thank you.
Mr. Toth, followed by Mr. Latimer and Mr. Chernecki.
Good evening.
Welcome.
Here representing myself. I'm not here representing any particular group, but I'm a Huntsville resident. So I took it on myself to be here for this. I haven't made up my mind yet which way we should perhaps go, but looking at the arguments is pretty impressive laid out here. Certainly a lot of work went into it, but I'm not convinced we're doing everything possible at this time, to make something like this work without having to dip into the citizens' pockets for another 1%. We proudly say how much Huntsville has grown, with the BRAC that brought in all the people and the business. People need to buy stuff. You can't tell me all those people that have come in aren't buying anything. So where's all the additional tax revenue for the increased sales from all the people and the businesses that came here? That's one question I have right off the top of my head. The other thing, I wonder how much money has the city of Huntsville paid into road repair, road maintenance that should have rightfully been paid by the state? Because I heard comments tonight that, hey, when state problems become Huntsville's problems, well, we take care of it ourselves, words to that effect. I've heard that we will not wait on the state to fix its roads in Huntsville. Well, okay. All right, that's fine. How much tax revenue that's collected in Huntsville from the expenditures of Huntsville's citizens goes to the state? There's an argument here that the state's going to have matching funds for this project. Well, I would propose that if the state has matching funds available, maybe they ought to just turn them over to us and reimburse us for the money that we've already expended that they should have on the roads that are here. Now, if the state's not willing to do that, why not withhold their share of the tax revenues that come out of the city of Huntsville? Yeah, why not withhold that amount and say, hey, that's okay, we're diverting it to the roads that you should have fixed, that it's now being fixed by our tax dollars. Now, I'm not talking about tax revolt here. I'm talking about tax justice, all right? Maybe we could just tell the state we're going to withhold that money in reimbursement for the money we've already laid out, and then we can turn that money back around to this commendable road project that I'm convinced we do need. But let's be smart. You know, Huntsville isn't a high-tech community. It's a high-tech industrial giant that helps drive the economic engine of the entire state. And to be treated this way by the state, by Montgomery, I'm beginning to think is a little reprehensible. Maybe it's time we eliminate Montgomery as the middleman with all that tax money and take what we need for our roads. I don't know, do we have anybody here that's up to that? Something to think about. Maybe it's just another solution. But I really don't like to hear how we have to step up and use our own money to do something that the state is supposed to already be doing, because Lord knows we provide the state a lot of tax. Right off the top of my head, I wonder how much money per gallon goes to the state that the state says, yeah, well, we need that so we can turn around and repair our roads, like the roads in your city that we're not fixing. Perhaps there is another way around this. So I look forward to seeing some other suggestions out there and some other proposals. And I know I stand ready. I know my address and telephone number is out there if anybody needs any help, and I can offer some suggestion. But let's see where it goes. But let's not be too quick to jump on this deal just because the state says, hey, we have matching funds, but only for a limited time, when really they need to be reimbursing us for the money we've already spent. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Toth. Mr. Latimer, followed by Mr. Chernesky, followed by Mr. Lee.
I want to thank the City Council and the Mayor for this opportunity to speak about this proposal. I want to applaud y'all, one, for actually balancing the budget in the midst of a recession without raising taxes. Y'all deserve a round of applause for that. But what I'm going to get to is I'm going to rise in opposition to this sales tax increase. It's been supported by some on this council that we should raise sales tax to improve road infrastructure. The main reason for this rush is to raise taxes that the state DOT has offered to match $125 million over 5 years. Y'all have heard all the details. Furthermore, several have stated, as among many of the citizens as well as y'all, if we don't take this deal, we'll not be able to make state road infrastructure changes for at least 10 years, if not longer. I find it disconcerting, perturbing to hear that the only logical solution to the needs of this city to pay for state road improvements is to raise city taxes. This is not an emergency. I will state that. This is not an emergency. Even though y'all do state that this is an economic emergency of some sort, I don't think this is really an emergency. And it is not a logical solution. The logical solution is to live within the revenues that the city receives and to actually operate within the budget that y'all come up with. We have heard all the different ways the city receives revenue. I think some people were surprised by that. I'll list a few more. Sales tax, use tax, property tax, home and car, gasoline tax, wholesale wine tax, city rental tax, city tobacco tax, liquor tax, lodging tax. There's 3 different types of those. Lodging surcharge, permit fees, licensing fees. Y'all mentioned the business permits. It seems that our city government leaders do not believe they are taking enough of our money and wish to grow our government to pay for these roads. And yes, there is a hang up on that, is it's not going to pay for just roads. This proposal pays for more than just roads. And I assure at the city council, if the citizens of this city can put that additional 1% additional tax money that you desire to better use than you can. There's no expiration date on this tax as it was currently proposed, though it looks like that y'all are going to try to put an amendment for some sort of a sunset provision on that. I have to support that only to one extent. It must be a sunset provision. And also, the voters should have the right to vote for a sales tax increase on themselves. We are a representative form of government, but I do believe that if it's going to be a sales tax increase, the citizens should have the right to vote on it. Lastly, I believe the Huntsville city government has fallen for the faulty premise that to solve a perceived road infrastructure problem, it must exercise its insatiable hunger for additional tax money. I think some others have already identified that as well. So I have some solutions to the proposal. I don't know if you'll like them, but here we go. I identify some of the solutions as: one, open a Tax Me More fund. If you want to contribute to the city for these roads, contribute to the fund. I've had many people come up, and y'all have identified as many as well, that have said it's not much money, it's just, 10 cents or, just an extra 1% on the dollar. If you're willing to spend it, contribute to the fund. Cut spending to outside groups. That has been identified as well. There's special appropriations to outside city and nonprofit agencies. In the current budget, the city is spending approximately $16.5 million to these city and other agencies. I've heard others prioritize it. That's not being done. And the other solution I would have is to actually have, and I'm not sure if this is possible or not, but some sort of pension reform at the city level for city employees. And with that, I thank y'all for the time to actually speak. Thank you.
Mr. Chernesky, followed by Mr. Lee and Ms. Reed.
Good evening, Mr. President, Mayor Battle, council members. I appreciate the opportunity to speak tonight. I'm an active duty service member, and my wife and I have been in the area for about 3 years now. We recently purchased a house at 1708 Graywood Court, and we were able to do that because we pinched our pennies and we saved. And we run our budget very tightly, and that paid off because we were able to invest in that property. I really appreciate Huntsville. I've lived in many different cities and different states around the country, and I've lived around the world as well. And I've been able to see a lot of different communities, and Huntsville is truly the gem of Alabama. I've lived in southern Alabama before, and if given the opportunity to stay here till I retire in about 5 years, we will stay here and we'll make Huntsville our home because it's such a beautiful city and the community is vibrant and open to community discussions such as this. My wife and I oppose this tax. We appreciate the lower sales tax in Huntsville, and it's one of the decisions that influences the potential for us to stay here when I retire from the military. So I would encourage you to stay on the lowest city tax, or sales tax rather, of the surrounding cities. Again, I think that if we pinch our pennies and we look around, we could be able to come up with that money, but again, it's a very difficult thing. That being said, if it truly is the only way is to raise the sales tax, then I definitely agree with putting a sunset on that sales tax and looking at that decision again, because 5 years is a decent amount of time and things can change in those 5 years. So again, my wife and I oppose the sales tax, but if it is that we have to absorb that sales tax, we will. There's not much we can do since the military decides they're going to keep me here for a while. But again, I would highly encourage you to give citizens the opportunity to vote again, put a sunset on that, or put a cap to the amount of money that you raise for those roads. Again, thank you for your work, and thank you for a beautiful city.
Thank you. Mr. Lee, followed by Ms. Reed and Mr. Cunningham.
Thank you, Mr. President. My name is Howell Lee. I am the Governmental Affairs Liaison for the Huntsville-Madison County Builders Association, one of those trade organizations, one of those special interests. We represent everybody that wants to live inside, basically. We advocate for them. y'all have touched on so many things tonight. I just wanted to touch on a few that my 1,100 member organization, which employs 16,000 people in the city of Huntsville, unanimously voted our board of directors Tuesday to endorse the mayor's plan. Our 52 member board, which represents a great cross section of our association. Basically, it's the old tram air filter commercial. Buy an air filter, pay me now, or buy a motor, pay me later. It's what we're looking at. It's doubled in the last 20 years, the cost of road construction. Nothing indicates that it's going to slow down. It'll be twice as much down the road. So, and I don't have the calculations, and I'm not a engineer or mathematician, but I think we're going to experience a revenue increase when people that are commuting, going home from work, whether it's north, south, east, or west in the city, will pull off and buy something at Kroger or Publix or wherever on the way home, where now they just keep going home. They're not going to get out of the traffic because they can't get back in. So, I mean, I think we'll actually pick up some revenue on the retail side of sales. There's been some discussion, and I think it's a legitimate discussion about what if we change governors and we have a new administration and they renege on a commitment that we have. And I'm certainly not eliminating that as a possibility, but the counter to that, I think, in my humble opinion, is that we have the rules chairman for the State House of Representatives in our delegation. And if somebody reneges on their promise in Montgomery, he can shut it down as far as the legislature and what they're doing. So we just asked Mr. McCutcheon to please shut it down until the governor comes around and lives up to his commitment, or whoever the new governor is. So that's workable. The mayor alluded to this a little bit at the end of his speech, but what this boils down to, gentlemen, is statesmanship. It's left the vernacular in D.C. I hope it has not left the vernacular in Huntsville, Alabama. But this is the time when you need to vote for what's best for this city, and not even necessarily what your constituents want you to do. Sometimes they're not right. And you all need to vote together, and you all need to vote for it. Anybody that doesn't, it's really a blatant political maneuver to get reelected down the road, and it will show up largely. I think it will hurt anyone who doesn't vote for it, because people need transportation. They need to get on the roads and need to have decent roads to go in. And if we don't plan for the future, we will be like the 280 in Montgomery, the Airport Boulevard in Mobile, where the damage has been done for so long, and the cost of acquiring right-of-ways would be in the hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars, and you're just trapped. I think it sends a very strong message, or my association does, that it sends a very strong message to industry, to the Department of Defense for future BRACs, to NASA, to everyone that's anchored in the city, that we are planning for the future of this area, and that we're going to be prepared for it when it comes. And if we can keep the commute time 20 minutes or below, it's a huge incentive for people to move here. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Reed, followed by Mr. Cunningham and Mr. Pinkleton.
Good evening. Thank you for allowing the public to get involved. Mayor Battle, I'll have to give you an A for your presentation. I can't go along with what you're proposing, but hey, you did a good job on your presentation. I guess this gentleman was talking about me a while ago when you said you can't get elected and it always comes back in your face at the next election, because somebody said, Dale Jackson, you're always against something, but I'm always thinking about something. There's two sides to everything. Anyway, I believe in good economic development and a great quality of life. I've been coming to these council 35 years, and roads has not been our top priority. Development, yes. Developers, yes. Roads, no. You're talking about our planning is not in order. Our priorities are out of order. We planned for this development and moving these 39 shops in Madison Square Mall are empty out there. Planning is missing something somewhere. It takes roads to get there. Roads coming in from Athens into Huntsville is a nightmare. 53 is a nightmare. every road in the city is a nightmare. But we think more of development and more of new buildings. I think we're about to put some of that money in this new building here. I don't want to hear it. Our road money, we need to borrow $125 million on a bond, on that bond. We don't have a problem of borrowing money. We don't have a problem with that AAA rating of getting the interest we want out there. We can refinance that thing 4 or 5 times in 5 years. That's what we do. That's exactly what we do. We don't have to put that 9% sales tax in there for. Here's what we did. $4.9 million on taking up bricks downtown in city streets and putting down more bricks. $4.9 million road money. $5 million is going to be from Governor's Drive coming into the council court for development. And now you're speaking of an overpass over here for the ducks to hide under on Church Street to cross Big Spring Park. Part of that is road money. We just annexed 1,500 acres, and the plat's being laid out, if I'm not mistaken, and we're going to have to build roads for those developers. The developers are not, have never, and will not pay their fair share until you back them up in a corner and put some of that money into our pockets and quit taking it away from the taxpayers. 868 acres in the Redstone Arsenal we annexed. Now, don't you know 800 acres of that's going to be for roads, for development, hotels, motels, and motels. That's what we do with our money. And you know, for you to put a 9-cent sales tax on the people, when Obama's done scared us all to death over the insurance out here, cut jobs where I work, no 40 hours anymore, it's all 28. Obamacare, they have to pay their insurance. People are running scared. People are losing their jobs. I know you think big up there, and I see this building. I hear that building's coming up. Is that part of our capital improvement plans? Earmark 125 year. Mark, you come up with, I like what you said.
Ms. Reed, but I'm going to have a heart attack when you suggested
Oh,
that we
please.
borrow more money.
But
so
you
I'm gonna-
brought
I'm
up
gonna
the-
wait 2 speakers, and I'm going to have a heart attack, and I'll be through.
Well, I wait. I said, you did say, yeah, the constituents, you do listen to me, trust me. But I believe you borrow the 125, whatever million they promise you down there, because the elections are coming up. Some's coming up here, and the governor, he's up for re-election. I don't trust anybody hardly. You know that. I don't hardly say anything good, because I'm scared to. You'll think I'm thinking something bad. But borrow 125 million, get 2 or 3% interest on it, and let us see what you're going to do with this money, and earmark every bit of that money for state roads. State roads, and quit building streets downtown and putting your money into downtown. I'm against it, 100% against it. And so, if you can't come up with borrowing just what you need for these particular roads that you're talking about, Old Madison Pike's been on the books for 17 years, and the funds, $2 million of it came from the state. What'd you do with that money? We don't know what you're going to do with it. I'm here right with you, but I can't keep up with you. I try, though. Trust me. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Tom Cunningham, followed by Mr. David Pinkleton.
Tom Cunningham, 4008 Dobbs Drive, Huntsville. An old habit. As you know, I've had some experience dealing with roadway construction and design, both local roads and state-funded roads. It's always been a struggle to find enough money to fund these projects. I think we have an opportunity here that's unprecedented as far as the state of Alabama, ALDOT, is concerned. It's a difficult pill to swallow, a 1-cent sales tax. None of us want it. However, I think in order to take advantage of this opportunity, we need to move forward with this sales tax. I commend the mayor for his initiating this process of first restore our roads that has resulted to the point we're in today. That is where the state of Alabama has offered to split the cost of $250 million worth of infrastructure with us on a 50-50 share. 7 projects in 6 years, that's unprecedented amount of work in such a short period of time. Typical federal aid projects take somewhere between 10 to 12 years and some longer. So getting this work done within a short time frame is going to save the city and the state money. Why is that? As been pointed out before, escalation of construction materials has actually exceeded the regular inflation rate. I have some documentation from a study that was done by Robert Boyer, who's a PhD and a professional engineer. He's also a nationally acclaimed expert in asphalt pavement. His figures show $150 per ton for liquid asphalt in 2002. That same ton in 2012 is $600. So you see just one component, that liquid asphalt is the tar, basically, that holds the asphalt together. You can see just one of the components of a roadway construction project has increased dramatically. When the mayor and others have stated that in 10 to 15 years projects double in cost, that is absolutely correct. I'd be surprised if it is only double. Many other components, concrete pipe, and so forth, also increase in cost. So I think we have an opportunity now to get this work done in a compressed time frame that will benefit the city tremendously in economic development growth and taking care of our transportation needs for some time to come. Again, in summary, I support the sales tax increase for the improvement of our roadway system. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Pinkleton.
Good evening. My name is David Pinkleton. I would like to arise in opposition to the proposed sales tax increase. I would like to help us better frame the discussion by understanding some of the political realities that must be factored into this decision. In particular, let's remember that we have several important elections coming up, and we will have future administrations at the city and the state level. In 2014, Councilman Olszewski has said he will not be running for re-election. There will be a new representative from South Huntsville. I know several of them were in attendance tonight. Also, our legislature will be up. Even though many of them will win re-election, they will be having potentially different committee positions. As much as we appreciate Representative McCutcheon being the rules chairman, there's no guarantee that he will be the rules chairman in the next quadrennium. Let's also not forget that in 2016, Mayor Battle will have finished his 4-year term, and he may decide to run for re-election, or he may not. There could potentially be a new mayor. And then obviously in 2018, we will have a new governor for sure, as Governor Bentley will be term limited. So what I'm trying to surmise is that the different administrations coming in, whether they be at the city level or at the state level, may have different priorities than what we have right now. Councilman Showers has expressed with regards to Maston Lake and also the Northern Bypass, there may be individuals that come in that don't prioritize that as high as him. Same way at the state level, we may have individuals that come in here and say we want to give priority to Mobile or Montgomery or Birmingham and not to Huntsville, and we have to remember that. Also, I want to mention that the path that is being selected right now is frankly not palatable to Huntsville voters, as if you go forward with a sales tax increase with no expiration date, this tax will not only be in perpetuity, but citizens of Huntsville would actually be deprived of future voter input, as we would not have the opportunity to weigh on that in the future. And you would also be making decisions on behalf of future administrations, and I highly doubt that they would appreciate that, because that actually is going to decrease flexibility that they would have when it comes to deciding how that money is being spent. And also, I would just say this is a very inopportune time to be having a discussion about tax increases. I know myself, as many others, we've received our notice from Blue Cross Blue Shield talking about higher health insurance premiums. Unemployment is still high. We have had sequestration and government shutdown. There is a potential for more sequestration and also federal budget uncertainty. Many people in this city are living paycheck to paycheck. And unfortunately, too, it's Christmas time, and many of them are struggling about making sure they have food and gifts underneath the Christmas tree. And unfortunately, what's being proposed is, frankly, a lump of coal to Huntsville taxpayers. So with that being said, this short time period also does not allow for maximization of citizen input. We have tried to compress what is a very complex, multifaceted situation into a 2-week time frame, and that does not allow for great citizen input. So like I said, I think we've had several good ideas put out with respect to reprioritization of how city money is being spent, and that if the path forward is to do a tax increase, there definitely needs to be a sunset provision, as we will definitely have a different face when it comes to the state level and the city level in the future. And we also need to make sure we do not deny citizens of Huntsville the opportunity to vote on this in the future. It's, once again, it is our money that would be spent on the road money. Thank you.
Raise your hand if you'd like to speak to council and you hadn't had a chance. So just one or two. Okay, go on to the microphone and just introduce yourself, please. And then, sir, if you'll come down also. So we've got two. This is the last call. Okay, we're going to do these two speakers, and we're going to adjourn. Sir, if you'll state your name and address for the record, please.
Hello, my name is Charles Krieger, 11315 Woodcrest Drive, South Huntsville. I have a question, and it's not a rhetorical question. I really kind of like to have an answer. If this sales tax increase is such a good idea, why can't the voters be allowed to vote on this? Everybody's asked that just in passing, but why is it that there can't be a vote? Why is it everything is going so quickly?
Mayor, you want to?
Somebody has said that possibly the council knows better than the citizens. Is that something that?
The reason this sales tax is coming up and the sales tax has been introduced is that the sales tax is one that the council can act on, that we can give a reply to Mr. Cooper very quickly. I imagine that there are many cities throughout the state that would love to have $250 million worth of road projects. If we don't act quickly, we don't get the money, and it's very simply on that. We have a chance to look at it. We have been working on this for 6 months. It finally came down to the final deal with Director Cooper, and he made the announcement Monday 2 weeks ago. We introduced it at council, and we made it a press conference so everybody could know about it. It's had time to air throughout this community and time to air with you. And now your council, who's your elected representatives, have the chance to vote on this.
He's not up for re-election. I don't think he's concerned. But these are your elected representatives, sir. They were elected by the people of the city of Huntsville, and they have the power to make that vote. So if it's been discussed for 6 months, why did I just hear about it last Thursday on the news? Why is it if it's been 6 months, couldn't there have been a vote presented to the people and let them decide if it's such a great thing?
I'll be glad to talk to you afterwards, but I can tell you that we've been working on this campaign, Restore Our Roads, for 6 months. The final ability to make this work finally came down when Director Cooper came Monday 2 weeks ago, and he made the offer to the city of Huntsville. Before that, there was not a known fact as to what actually was going to be the final result of it. And until the final result came out, it would not be addressed. We hoped that we could get it through ATRIP funding. ATRIP funding brought $88 million to this community, but it was used on minor collector roads, it was used to rebuild bridges and to repave roads. It was not used on major arterials. We were told that major arterials could not be used for ATRIP funding. After that, we went back to Plan B. How do we still get the roads that we have to have? That's one of the main things we have to look at. Everybody can sit here and say, I don't want to tax, I don't want to tax. But what are we going to do in 10 years when we have no roads built and we are sitting here in the middle of gridlock, and we as a community are looking around and we're calling City Hall and saying, I can't get anywhere. Well, I'm sorry, that's a state problem. That's a state problem, and we'll just have to call your representative and your senators. We called every one of our representatives and senators. We talked to each one of them. We have to come up with Plan B. Plan B is the best plan that we've been able to come up with.
Okay, sir, do you have any other comments for us? Or
a sales tax is a percentage. It grows with the size of the city. I don't understand why the city suddenly needs a bigger piece. Why do they need a bigger piece of the income of the citizens of Huntsville?
You have anything else?
The 8%.
Do you have a comment, or do you want to have a discussion?
Well, the 8% continues to produce more revenue. So you're getting more money as the years go by. Why is it that there needs to be an increase in
If you look at your numbers in 2008 versus 2007, the 8% produced less money in 2008 than it did 2007. Today, we're just getting back to the numbers that we were at in 2007. So I can tell you that your sales tax has not increased.
This is a state that the rest of us are living in. We're all in a downturn. Why is it the city can't stand a downturn?
Sir, do you have any comments for us?
No.
Okay, thank you. Sir?
Sit down.
Mr. President, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, my name is Matt Wisda. I'd like to refrain from telling you guys my address. I don't know whether you try to come and find me after I say this. But I think it's... Do what? I'm a local attorney here in Huntsville, and I think it's important that people understand how we got to where we are now. It's my understanding, although I'm not positive, that hundreds of millions of dollars of road funds had already been allocated to this area, and that they were taken away from us. And I don't understand I guess this is a rhetorical statement or series of statements, how South Alabama goes and gets 2/3 or thereabout of the money. When we produce so much income for the state of Alabama in the form of income taxes and other taxes. And while you guys were working so hard over the summer, Mr. Mayor, Mr. President, members of the City Council with legislatures who represent us in the area, our main state senator was nowhere to be found. He wasn't at the table, and now we're all at the menu. And I just think it's important for the people of Huntsville to understand that. I'd like to thank you for taking the steps that you've taken. I hate taxes as a Republican, obviously, but we've got to do what we've got to do to bring more economic infrastructure to the area, and that takes roads and bridges and things like that. So I thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Council members, anything else before we adjourn? We're adjourned. Thank you for coming.